How do you play better and more professional sounding guitar solos? How do you finally stop playing the same ideas and licks over and over again? How do you come up with interesting and exciting ideas on the spot when you're improvising? Those are some of the most frequently asked student questions right now in my shred guitar community over at patreon.com/Bernd. So I think this is the perfect time to finally record a video that is addressing all of these topics. In this video I don't just want to leave you with an abstract idea or mindset on how to play and compose better solos. I want to show you an easy and very effective exercise that will make your next guitar solo much better already. So let's roll the intro and start shredding. So to establish a practical context, we first need a riff that we will shred over today. This is the idea that I came up with for this lesson based around the key of C minor. So a pretty nice and simple backdrop for our guitar solos today. This riff is mostly based on the very popular power chords, but let's check it out in detail real quick. So first we have a basic C minor chord voicing, and I'm adding the perfect fifth G once again on the bottom of the chord. That always sounds great with distortion, and we get a big sounding chord right in the beginning. For this one I'm not just playing the power chord, I'm also adding the minor third E flat on top. That way I just get the basic sound and flavor of minor on the tonic chord right here instead of just playing the bland power chord. Up next I'm just quickly sliding down to the F power chord. This one just serves as a small transition to the next chord. Here I'm basically just thinking an E flat power chord, and I'm adding the perfect fifth B flat on the bottom of the chord once again. Just like with the voicing in the beginning, it makes the chord a bit bigger. And I'm also adding the ninth F on top to make it more interesting. Then I'm going to a D diminished chord to introduce a bit of dissonance. In the key of C minor I'd actually have a D half diminished chord on the second scale degree, but with metal and rock riffs it's just a bit more common to work with the diminished seventh chord right here, borrowing the note B. And after that we just have the A flat, B flat and G power chords. That leaves a lot of nice room to breathe for our guitar solo right here. And then I'm sliding down to the F power chord before the entire thing would start again. As always, you can download the detailed tabs and guitar profiles for this riff on my Patreon page, patreon.com/Bernd. On there I'm constantly uploading the tabs, guitar profiles, practice backing tracks and video play-alongs for these YouTube lessons. And I also have a VIP club on there in the form of a secret and hidden Facebook group. That way I can personally interact with the students on there. We will get to the very important trick and exercise I want to show you very soon, but first let's quickly lay down the foundation for this lesson. Let's talk about two very common approaches that I hear from my students when I ask them to play a guitar solo over that. Maybe you can identify with this, let me know in the comments if those two examples sound familiar to you. The first very common approach would be thinking, well, this riff is in the key of C minor, and I know this one minor pentatonic scale box, the A minor pentatonic scale, in this position on the fretboard, and I could just move it to the key of C minor and play all the licks and tricks that I learned so far in this scale box. Here's a demonstration of how that could sound like over today's riff. So that doesn't sound wrong, and I don't want to condemn the use of the minor pentatonic scale at all, but in my opinion there are a couple of issues right here and this could be done much better. First of all, an experienced player and also an experienced listener will hear that you're just working with one scale position, with that one scale box in that one position on the neck. Thinking like that will of course limit your creative possibilities quite a lot if you're just working with a confined place like that. And sometimes my students don't even want to play in this exact section of the fretboard, but they only know this one scale box that they can move around. Another thing that you could probably see visually when you were looking at this take is that I was stacking together different patterns that I memorized. So for example right here with the slides, that's one idea I might have picked up from a video or a book and then just applying it to that scale position. That lick in triplets with the pull-offs I'm playing right here is also quite popular, I think. And this kind of pentatonic style shred lick is particularly popular, and I don't think that this is the first time you ever heard it. So it kind of ends up sounding a bit predictable and boring when you just stack those building blocks together. And the final thing I have to criticize with this take is that I wasn't paying attention to the riff in the background, to the changing chords. And this is also very important concerning the second approach that I want to show you, that I hear quite often, especially from myself. When you work very hard on different techniques like fast alternate picking licks in 3-note per string scales, or legato licks, or sweep picking arpeggios, of course you also want to show off these skills in your guitar solos here and there. So sometimes you end up only thinking in the C minor scale all across the neck and playing as fast as complicated as possible. Here's how that could sound like. I have to admit that shredding over tracks like that is a guilty pleasure of mine, and it can sound cool if it's applied in the right way. But if you only play like that, it won't be very interesting for the listener, and it just kind of sounds like you're practicing your licks and exercises over the track. Now let's finally get to the mindset, trick and exercise I want to show you in today's video. Let's listen to one more take that immediately sounds much more interesting and musical. For me personally, and to my ears, it finally sounded like I was playing with the music and not just something that's simply stacked above the music or even playing against the music. The reason for that is that I was just simply working with basic triad voicings to really accent those interesting chords correctly. Triads are insanely helpful when you're writing guitar solos and especially when you're improvising. This is something that's overlooked so often since we're just so focused on learning the next exotic scale or sound. And the most creative, interesting and musical solutions often lie hidden within the absolute fundamentals when it comes to guitar playing. Before we get to the exercise that I want you to practice from now on to improve your guitar solos, let's check out this final take step by step and figure out why it sounds so great. So for the C minor chord, I'm really just thinking in those basic C minor triad shapes. So I'm playing the root, minor third and perfect fifth, and I'm just ascending with those 3 different shapes, the red dots you see on the fretboard below. And as you can see with the black dots, I'm also borrowing some notes from the C minor scale to make it a bit more interesting. But the fundamental and important idea is just moving those different triad shapes across the neck, and that way I can really bring out the sound of this C minor chord because I'm playing the notes of the C minor chord in my solo. Let's check out what happens next. So once again I'm working with a super basic triad shape for the E flat power chord, and I'm adding the major 7th D right here, which makes it very interesting, and I'm also incorporating a little sweep. Up next I'm quickly playing a D diminished arpeggio shape for that D diminished chord in the background, and quickly accenting those fast moving important chords in the cadence is really awesome. You might think like quick accents and details like that aren't that important, but they make a huge difference with your guitar solo, so definitely pay attention to that. So up next for the A flat power chord, I'm once again ascending with the A flat major triad shapes. So that once again really brings out the sound of that A flat major chord we have on the scale degree. And in the end right here I once again work with major triads for the G power chord. Since it's just a power chord right here in the background, we have the option to turn the dominant chord here in the minor key into a major chord instead of a minor chord. And that always gives us a nice sense of tension and resolution. And in the end I was just playing a super quick harmonic minor scale run to also add some shredding to this take. So overall I hope you agree with me that this take sounds very interesting, melodic and musical. So let's finally discuss the exercise that I want you to practice to memorize those major and minor triads across the neck. When you work on this one, it will be easy to memorize and to utilize those minor and major triad shapes in a practical context when you're writing your next guitar solo or when you're improvising your next guitar solo take. Let's check out one repetition of the exercise real quick before we check out the details on how to practice this every day. So as you could see, we are just focusing on the G, B and E string for the moment. Since we're discussing the use of the major and minor triad shapes in a guitar solo context with this lesson, it makes sense of course to start out with the 3 highest strings on the instrument. This is also a great alternate picking exercise since we are playing 2 strokes for every single note in those triads, and we are first ascending with the minor triads and then we are switching to the major triads. And the great thing obviously is that we only have to change one note to get from the minor triads to the major triads. We have to change the minor third into a major third. The rest stays the same, the root note and the perfect fifth. So you really make sure to understand and visualize this connection correctly when you're practicing the minor and the major triads in one workout. When you're practicing this workout, I also want you to memorize the notes that you're playing with each triad shape, because you need to remember where the root note, third and fifth are located, so that you can quickly use and visualize those shapes for the correct chords when you're improvising or writing guitar solos. As a bonus for all Shred Guitar community members on Patreon, I also recorded some video play-along files once again in different tempos. By downloading these really helpful video play-along files, you can practice together with me in your next practice session, and you can quickly and systematically learn the major and minor triads all across the neck by working with those video play-alongs. Of course, and as always, I also made sure to add some scrolling tablature to those videos. That way you can easily memorize those shapes and keep a good overview over the fretboard when you're practicing. So I really hope that this lesson and the use of major and minor triads will really spice up your solos from now on. Remember to leave a like if you enjoyed this lesson and if it was helpful for you, and a comment in case you have any further questions for me. And also don't forget to download all your files for this lesson on patreon.com/Bernd. I hope I see you again in the next video lesson. All the best and have a lot of fun working on this until then.